here. Pete and Tyler, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
It's our pleasure. Thanks for reaching out. I'm glad we finally got to connect. It's been a little while since you first reached out.
Yeah, well, it's really cool to connect. Tyler, obviously you are a pretty famous person, but maybe I'll just let you briefly explain your past career and what you're up to now. And then Pete.
Oh, yeah. I used to be a professional cyclist. Yeah, I rode the Tour de France, like 8 times. Yeah. Couple Olympic Games. Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah. That was back. So I rode as a professional back mid-90s through through the early 2000s or mid-2000s, really, through, retired finally 2009. But yeah, kind of climbed the ranks and of the professional peloton, and with that climbing of the ranks came the dark side and the whole situation of doping. Yeah, I got involved in all that, and once I made it up to the Tour de France level, and then that was kind of lived like a double life for a long time, and yeah, that eventually the secret finally came out back in 2010, 11.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Talked about it publicly. Yeah, wrote a book about it. Yeah. But yeah, what am I up to today?
What are you doing nowadays?
What's that?
What are you up to nowadays?
Yeah, Pete and I started a podcast. We're just kind of a fun little project. We started a podcast. How long ago, Pete?
November, I think, is when was when it was real.
Yeah, awesome. I work for a financial advisory group down in Denver. I live here in Missoula, Montana, so I travel down there once a week, every 3 to 4 weeks, probably, for the work week. So yeah, I've been doing that for the last year and a half. I also have a coaching business called Tyler Hamilton Training. That's been a lot of fun. I've been doing that since 2009.
Yep.
And then, I do a lot of work with the fight against multiple sclerosis, MS.
Cool.
So,
very cool.
Yeah. Got a great girlfriend. She's got 2 young kids who are just awesome, and beautiful golden retriever. And yeah.
Right on. And Pete, you are the co-host of the Adventure audio podcast with Tyler then?
That's right. Yeah. So totally different background, not a professional athlete who's been in the business world.
Okay.
My whole life, and have done a whole bunch of different stuff. And I'm a business operations consultant, but have had, just as a lot more people, I have a more common story of the love of the bike than Tyler does, a much more regular person.
Yep.
Just grew up loving to ride and sort of refound it in my young adulthood, and got more and more passionate about it all the time. And that led to a couple of side projects related to cycling, running some bike races, and then I ran some trade shows. How Tyler and I met.
Oh, cool.
So running bike shows in Calgary and Edmonton for, I think, 4 years, I guess. And we wanted to have somebody up to speak. We always had a speaker series, and we had a bunch of great people in there. But one of the people that we wanted to reach out to was Tyler, because I'd read his book, and it was, he just really seemed like a different guy from a lot of the people in that era. And not that he didn't make the same mistakes, he owned it in a different way, where a lot of guys, it happened, and there was sort of some half truths, and they just kind of moved on. And Tyler, when I read his book, there was a lot of innuendo and stuff, because I watched that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I grew up and was much more interested in BMX and mountain biking and stuff like that. And that was my thing. And then as I got really into mountain biking, in the late 90s, that's when Lance won the tour, and suddenly everybody in North America was watching road racing. And then I got a road bike and got into that whole scene and sort of followed. And I wanted to believe that whole generation was clean too, but I'm, skeptical. And then once I read Tyler's book, I was like, there's no fucking way. It's just way too detailed. It's way too real. This obviously happened. And I had a lot of admiration for him, because there was just, that would have been brutal. He had the in order to do that, right?
Yeah.
My cousin Sasha and I, who started reached out to him,
Huh.
and we had him up to speak. And so he and his head coach at his training company, so shout out to Todd a lot, and he's they came up to talk about the training company, and then Tyler did a for attendees at the end of each day. It was pretty compelling. And so the four of us kind of became friends, Tyler and Jim and Sash and I, and then we were at a couple of cycling camps from there in Banff, and we had a lot of fun. And I wanted to start a podcast and talk about endurance sports and cycling, just because I love to talk about it, and I liked the idea of having a co-host for sure. I think it's easier for flow, conversation, and stuff, and a little less pressure. And then obviously it's cool to have somebody with a profile like Tyler.
Yeah.
He and I, whenever we were together and for whatever, or just even catching up, loved it. We were both fascinated by so many people.
Yeah.
Out of both professionals and amateurs. So
yep.
We thought we would jump into it, and it's been super. It's been way more fun than I thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm constantly thinking of read things and see articles, and see stuff on Instagram, and I'm like, oh my god, we should talk about it for the podcast. Like it's just it's been super fun.
That's really cool. So getting back to the origins, I read, Tyler, you grew up ski racing originally back in Eastern US?
Yeah, I was a ski racer growing up. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I also did.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, it's great. It's great. I love ski racing. Yeah, that was my I would say it was my true love, really.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, if I could have made it in ski racing, I would have. But I wasn't quite good enough. But I raced at a pretty high level. Raced at for the University of Colorado in Boulder. Yeah. In the early 90s. Yep. And then I was dryland training with the ski team my sophomore year in college there. And we were actually training on mountain bikes, and I went flying over the bars and broke my back.
Huh.
And and when I got out of bed, they said I could ride a road bike. So and I had to take that win. That was my first time not raced, like skipping a ski season since I was, since before I could walk, really.
Right.
But yeah, and little did I know, like Boulder, Colorado was a huge cycling town. And it just took off.
The rest is history, as they say.
I was pretty lucky to live in Boulder at that time. There was so many top professionals and top amateur riders there. So I learned really quickly and climbed the ranks quickly, But had I been out in the middle of nowhere and, somewhere else, that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. I think my brother met you once, James, the other Rose Bro, and he'd mentioned Jimmy Oego was one of your idols growing up.
Yeah.
How did you? Yeah. Did you know him, or did you race?
I mean, I knew of him growing up because he was he and Billy the Kid were the first Americans to win Alpine medals in the Olympics. So I knew all about him just growing up as a ski racer. But I didn't get to meet him until 2004. Once MS, multiple sclerosis, had really, kind of gotten the better of him. He's living in at that point, living in a full care facility.
Yeah.
So I'd go and visit with him. I was doing a lot of work with MS, so and we got introduced, and I felt really lucky. Just an incredible person. He passed due to MS complications in 2010.
Okay.
Just an amazing person. He was an amazing skier, and then was thrown a massive curveball in his life. He was diagnosed with MS in 1970, and really just changed the game. Doctors back then told you to sit on the couch and just save your energy.
Yeah.
And that's what he did for a couple of years. Then he was like, no, I'm not doing this, and I'm going to do what I can do. And got out, got moving around, and and has helped change a lot of other people's lives due to his positive act.
Do you go out skiing much? You and Pete ski out in Canada or down in the States still? Or?
Yeah, I still ski a fair amount. Yeah, I coached ski racing here in Missoula for I think 4 or 5 years. Yeah,
Really?
I did that kind of with the side little project, and it was kind of fun to come like full circle, back to my ski racing roots.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of it's still the same. It just takes so much time, so much energy, but it's so much fun, and being a coach was just great. Kids are awesome.
Did you know Bodie Miller growing up out east in New Hampshire?
Yeah, we grew up kind of skiing close to each other. Yep. I didn't really know him really well. He's a little bit younger than me, but I certainly know of him well. And my brother's a big ski racing. Now he's a coach, but it's ski racing is a kind of a small fraternity.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's kind of fun today. Like I bump into people from way back when, and it's kind of neat. You have all these cool stories to reminisce about. Yeah,
absolutely. Pete, do you ever get out skiing?
Snowboard. I grew up skiing. Like my mom was a ski instructor when my parents are from outside of Montreal, so that's. And my uncle was a ski instructor. So I was on skis when I was like 3 years old, and skied into my like early teens. I was never very good at it though, or a racer or anything like that. But if you grow up in Calgary, you need to find something to do in the outdoors in the winter.
The long winter.
Totally. And then like a lot of people, once I was, driving and discovered girls and stuff like that, I was less concerned with the outdoors for a few years. And then when I wanted to kind of get back into it, all of my friends were snowboarding. Yeah, I learned to snowboard, which is, a steep learning curve. Skiing gave me like no ability to snowboard at all.
Doesn't really help.
So I'm still a very intermediate snowboarder, but I love to get out. Like my kids are faster than me on skis now.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't take long, I would imagine.
Yeah. Because it's so, if you learn when you're little, right, it's totally different. Like when I was starting to do some triathlons a little while ago, and I was really trying to learn hard to swim well and to like crack off laps. Somebody told me to learn something as an adult. It's like a language.
Yep.
Learn to do it really well, but you'll always have an accent.
Yeah.
But if you learn it when you're little, you won't, right?
Yeah.
And it's true. If you, like Tyler knows, like watching my kids learn to ski at like 3 years old, they're a foot off the ground.
Yeah.
They don't
Pretty
get
lucky.
hurt. It's just totally different. You have no sense of mortality, but when you fall on a snowboard, like it's violent and hard. Yeah. So not as much as I'd like to. My boys are 3 kids, but my boys are 11 and 7, and they both play hockey, so that keeps us in town a lot of weekends. But we get out when we can.
Cool. Tyler, when you got into road biking, you steadily got better and whatnot, and by I think around the mid-90s, you had become a pro. When you started with the U.S. Postal Team, did you have any idea what was going on and how good the team was? Something special was going on, and how good everyone around you was?
Yeah, no, I had no idea. I mean, I turned pro in 1995. Yeah, it was it was under a different title sponsor, but it was the same. In 1996, it became the U.S. Postal Service.
And you were riding with Lance and George Hincapie and.
Yeah, all those guys. Yeah, but no, for me it was just wow. Like all of a sudden I was getting paid to ride my bike, and I signed a small contract, in 1995, and I think I even signed a 2-year contract, and that was really cool. Been going to school and just scraping by, really.
Yeah.
A typical student.
I think in your book you said that you were like, weren't you like painting a house when you got the phone call?
Yeah.
Your first contract?
House for money.
Wow.
Yeah. When I got the call from this guy Tom Weissel, he called me and I had a couple teams that were interested in me, so I was kind of waiting, and he was like, "I'll pay you this," and I was like, "Okay, done." I was on the ladder. Yeah, so yeah, but I had really no idea if I'd be back in school, that next year. Then every year it kept getting bigger and bigger, 95, my first year as a pro, I had a lot of success. That was racing mostly domestically in the States. But with a few trips over to Europe. By 96, won a stage race in Europe. you know, was the first alternate to the Olympic team. Was finding more success. And then 97, the team, we got a bump up in our budget from the U.S. Postal Service, and they wanted to become like a Tour de France type team.
Mm-hmm.
So between 96 and 97, we became basically, went from maybe like a AAA baseball team to kind of the major leagues.
Right.
And that's, so, and with that came, a lot of different things, some good things, some bad things, and doping was one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So
when you met Lance, did you automatically know that he was a little better than the rest, or was it just another good competitive teammate?
When I first met him was in a bike race, probably in 1994. I raced against him. Yeah. I mean, I knew he was extremely talented. Yeah.
So it was always.
Years later, in 1998, he became my teammate. Yep. Yep. I knew he was an incredible athlete. He was pretty much anything he did athletically, he succeeded for sure. Swimming, running. Yeah, he was a great triathlete.
But it's a team sport, so it involved all you guys to make him the champion, obviously. So
Yeah. But he was talented.
Right.
To be a team, you got to be talented. Incredibly talented, for sure. Yeah.
I remember I wasn't very old, but Lance started winning and all you guys were becoming famous. I don't know if Pete, do you remember that very well, or I'm sure you
totally. Totally. Yeah. I think I was like always peripherally aware of the Tour de France. And just as I got more interested in cycling and hanging around bike shops and stuff, they would, have some of the stuff on, or like, some of them are in French and Italian in these bike races, to pay attention to that stuff. And got really interested in the classics, like the one-day classics. Like I loved those.
Yep.
But yeah, I think, so I guess I would have started paying a little bit of attention to it before Lance won, but his comeback story for Cancer was electric, right? Like it was fascinating, and it was right in my wheelhouse. That was when I was really into bike riding, and I had a lot of free time and young, right? Like I was in my early, I guess, late teens, early 20s,
right?
Early 20s. So if I wasn't working or riding my bike, I could watch 4-hour tour stage. It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
I got totally into that. Like that. I remember all that stuff very, very well. It's the whole reason I had a road bike.
Yeah, exactly.
That whole generation of guys, yeah.
Tyler, do you remember when you guys won the first Tour de France? What was that experience like?
Yeah, that was in 1999. Yep, with Lance. Yep. That was a great experience. It was, we were kind of the sort of bad news bears of professional cycling at that level. We were basically one of the smaller budgeted teams. We didn't have all the big fancy buses and all that stuff. So we were kind of a young, scrappy team. And we had a strong leader, but maybe a lot of his lieutenants were not so strong, and so we had to really prove a lot of people wrong. Early on when Lance took the yellow jersey, they were saying that he didn't have a strong enough team to win the Tour de France. So
really?
that gave us motivation early on, for sure.
I remember that part well. Nobody thought the team could do it. I don't think you guys got credit for being tactical enough either. Maybe, right? Like you weren't a European team. And I also remember people thinking that Lance couldn't climb the mountains.
Yeah. We also had a great director, this guy Johan Bernal, and he was, he raced himself as a professional. He'd won a stage in the Tour de France, and he was a great tactician. So, we were lucky to have him, for sure.
Was there something that you think separated you guys that kind of made you outliers from the rest of the teams out there?
I don't know. I mean, there was obviously the doping, but
other than that, we can get into that.
But at that time, I would say the majority of the pro peloton was at that level was involved to some degree.
Everybody was doping.
There were a lot. I can't, you know, that was involved obviously, but there was we trained our tails off, and we stayed incredibly focused. You know, I always thought it was an advantage to be an American living in Europe and racing over in Europe, because you didn't really know a whole lot of people over there. You live in some foreign country, and so you could really focus on your job. You know, eat, sleep, and train.
Right.
You know? And whereas a lot of I had plenty of teammates from other countries over the years, and they get distracted a lot, and due to they live in a little village in France, and their families are all around, and they're getting pulled to this and that. Whereas we had pretty much nothing, and you could really live like a monk and really focus on your job. So, but yeah, we worked hard. Anybody for sure.
Something that stood out to me about those teams, and looking back on it and reading your book and other books who were around there, I think to tie it into what you guys do on your podcast and you talk about business and outliers and stuff like that. I think something that stands out to me there is that you guys were, doping aside, we're all about finding marginal gains. Right? Yeah. We're doing reconnaissance of climbs and stuff way before that was a thing. And I think that can be applied to all parts of life. There's stuff that people in your field that, everything's competitive. Every coffee business is competitive. Yeah. Where can you find something where somebody's not putting in that work? Yeah. And that's something that stood out from those early postal teams.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that you guys were doing all kinds of dirty work. Again, aside from doping that other teams were doing. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, back then, in those kind of those years when Lance started winning, there was very little recon of the routes. We did that all the important tour stages. Only maybe a few other teams did.
Yeah, exactly.
Altitude training, not many teams were doing that. And nowadays, everybody's doing all of that. Altitude, everybody does recon. Everyone now, you can watch the video on the. You can watch the stages on video. Your weight. Everybody now. Back then, there were some riders who didn't take it so seriously, and they could have shed a few extra pounds. Now everybody's like that.
Yeah.
So skinny.
Unfortunately, cycling is a sport, but your weight's super critical. So we had to be crazy skinny for a race like the Tour. Now back then, not everybody trained that hard. They maybe put in a lot of hours, but they kind of trained stupid's not the right word, but just they didn't have maybe either the right discipline or the right coaching and all that. We did a lot of hard interval training, and nowadays everybody's doing that. So yeah, I mean, we had the advantage of that kind of super fast equipment, fast and light. Definitely lighter than a lot of the other bikes out there.
Really?
For sure. So I felt like we were on the forefront of a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, I've watched Lance on Joe Rogan and whatnot, and it just seems like doping rose the tide for everybody. So if you take away, what they didn't take away is the second and third place guys, right? They didn't strip them.
Yeah, it's complicated.
You know what I mean? And so
it's not black or white. It's all.
That is complicated. But even within the doping, it wasn't just when you read Tyler's book, it wasn't just doping. There was science behind that. You wouldn't have done it if you weren't. It was all about having something measurable, right? So it was about measuring the hematocrit and those are the things that doping's been around in cycling and cheating's been around in sports. It existed, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's a really good book called Rough Ride by Paul Kimmage. Name right? And those back in the 60s and 70s, they were just taking amphetamines. There's no science behind that.
Seems like a bad idea.
Yeah, totally, right. And they weren't drawing their blood. They didn't have taking a bunch of amphetamines. That's what killed Tom Simpson, probably, right? So even within the doping, there was much more cognitive science behind that, which, again, that not to condone that, but apply that line of thinking to whatever you do. To like, you can't. You have to measure things, right? You have to measure things if you want to have a positive result.
So do you think that if doping hadn't existed, that you and Lance and George would have still been the best team no matter what?
The best team?
Yeah, best riders, and Lance would have won and you would have won. And
yeah, I mean, it's hard to say exactly, and that's one of the sad things about this, this whole story is like, we'll never really know.
Yeah.
We didn't, I don't know, like I climbed the ranks pretty fast doing it clean, but then, once I got invited into that fraternity, it's like, this is what I'm expected to do. And, but you also didn't give yourself the opportunity to see, how far you could have done it clean, so we'll never know. And, it wasn't exactly equal. You can't, these products affect riders differently. The more money a rider makes, the more, the better doctors they can work with. And
but even within that, like, I've heard the argument that, like, when people say, well, everybody doped, so it was an even playing field, that's maybe not necessarily true scientifically, because people respond differently, right? So if you have, like, what was the hematocrit limit, Tyler, when you were racing? Was it 50?
The highest you were allowed to have is 50 or 49.
50, right? So, but if you were walking around naturally at 43,
yeah, for
and
sure.
you doped your way up to 50, you've gained points theoretically, right? Where somebody who's walking around at 30 and dopes their way up to 50,
yeah,
if neither of them dope, the guy with the 43 hematocrit, if they're
yes,
and that guy's going to win.
yeah.
So the guy at 30, he didn't cheat more, but he got a bigger advantage.
Right.
Oh, because
right.
it wasn't about your physiology then, right? So, like,
But
when people say that they should just allow doping, I think that's insane.
Yeah.
But back to Lance and George, incredible athletes,
right.
for sure, like 1,000%, and super uber talented. Yeah.
And you too. I mean, you were almost on track to be a ski racer, and then kind of just switched over and became a pro rider out of nowhere.
Yeah, it turns out I was a better cyclist than a probably ski racer. Yeah, and I was sad. I grew up watching Phil and Steve Mayer.
Yeah.
Were winning medals in 1984 in Sarajevo Olympics in '84.
Yeah.
Cameron McKinney, Bill Johnson. Yeah, those are my heroes.
Huh.
But yeah, cycling, whatever, found me kind of, and climbed the ranks pretty quick. And overall it was a lot of fun. There was just this kind of secret world to it that I experienced. Once you got up to that high level, and it was unfortunate, but doping had been going on in cycling for a long time. It wasn't like Lance didn't start it or I didn't start it.
Mm-hmm.
It existed for a long time. Unfortunately, the sport's just so hard.
Yeah.
People look for ways to cut the corners. Yeah. But it's a beautiful sport. I love what the tour is going on right now, and I've been watching it. At least the critical stages, the mountain stages, and it's a lot of fun to watch the effort that goes into a race like that. It's just insane. And, both mentally and physically, just incredible. Hardest sporting event in the world, hands down.
Did you watch Icarus, that Netflix show? I think you probably know those guys.
Yeah, I watched it.
He made it seem like doping was the answer, and that without it he couldn't compete. You agree with that?
I would agree. Back in my day, you couldn't really compete, at the highest level. No, it would have been extremely hard.
So
I don't know.
Yeah.
Back in my day, I don't know what it's like today, or but back in those, let's call it in the year 2000, there was doping was in the sport of cycling was rampant.
Right.
Yeah, it's a crazy documentary.
Yeah, did you see that, Pete?
Good, yeah. It's absolutely, it's bonkers.
Yeah,
the story behind it too, right? How he set out to make a documentary about doping and how it affected him, and it just took the
Yeah.
became a documentary about the Russian doping scandal. Like, it's bonkers. And he's still hiding, isn't he? I think this guy, Gregory, I can't remember how to pronounce it. He's still in hiding in the US, I think, because I'm sure Putin's trying to, which is like, it's just
Hey, your audio is kind of going in and out a little bit.
Mine is?
It's in and out. I wasn't sure if you were still talking.
Oh, sorry.
But,
how is this now?
That's good.
But I was just saying that it was so nuts how that story pivoted, and I think that that Gregory, and I can't remember how to pronounce his last name, but I think he's still in witness protection somewhere.
Yeah, he'll be in hiding for the rest of his life, unfortunately. That's how deep it goes.
And Putin's not the type of guy who's going to let that slide. Seem like scary.
Huh. When you first started taking things like EPO and whatnot, I watched clips and you said you could feel it pretty much immediately. Was it kind of overnight?
Yeah,
or?
You couldn't feel it immediately, but if you were on, the doctor put you on like a course for a couple of weeks, and you'd feel it. After 10 days or so, you'd start to feel it, and that same climb that you do every day in training, it started to feel a little bit easier. You could feel a difference, certainly. You could almost like push one more gear than normal. Yeah. But EPO kind of slowly kind of build up your hematocrit.
I see.
Something else, testosterone. I took a little testosterone pill.
I watched that. Yeah, that clip.
Initial doping product that I took that was handed to me by a team doctor. And I felt better recovered than had I not taken it.
Did you ever worry about the health fallout from that? I mean, like some people, I don't know if it's just an urban legend, what with Lance and his cancer and all that, and I don't know. Is that ever a concern of yours?
Yeah. I thought about it. The doctors said everything we were taking was, safe. We were taking safe amounts. Like testosterone, obviously, would be dangerous if you took a lot of it. We just took small little amounts once in a while. Sometimes it was just like a little patch on your arm. It would just absorb into your body for a few hours, but we didn't take massive amounts of that. But EPO was something that we certainly abused. But so far so good. Knock on wood.
Wasn't overwhelming concern, obviously, and like you and Lance probably ride harder than the average Joe even now. So it seems like it wasn't. There was no real fallout at the end of the day.
I don't understand. What's that?
Well, like you guys probably, if you go on an average ride nowadays, like you're so healthy now that your riding is way above the average Joe. So there was obviously no health fallouts from some of the EPOs and whatnot.
I don't know. I mean, the biggest thing, physically was just the mental side of it, really.
Yeah.
For me, brutal. I mean, just crippling at times, really. So having to come to terms with it and deal with it and finally unload the whole truth, not just part of the truth, but the whole. That was hard. That's certainly hard, and
that's something
having
that
to deal. This was a big cycling. The elite tier of cycling. That was my family. For a long time, and then I had to break the code and break the omerta, and the mental side was tough because I put a lot of people in difficult situations, but didn't want the truth to come out. But I felt like eventually it was time.
I told Tyler this. I reread his book. At some point, we'll circle around and do a pod on our show about it. But reading it, not knowing him, and then reading it as we've become friends is a totally different experience. It was so stressful to reread it because I know him and I know that he would have just taken the stuff so seriously, and just the stress. I think you say at some point in your book, Ty, that you always knew there's too many people knew the secret, and there's no way that it can stay secret forever. to go to bed every night, like with that, like with like this impending sense of doom. It was.
Yeah, I mean, I did spend a lot of time worrying about it. You know, it was like the secret was too big for it not to come out. That's what I thought always, and I call them committee meetings, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I'd just stress about it for an hour or two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but just look at the ceiling and think about, like, you know, is the truth going to come out? Because that's the last thing in the world I wanted, and that's the last thing in the world the sport wanted. You know? Mm. But it was a big secret. Yeah, you know, I think it was healthy that it came out. You know, it needed to come out, and you know, the sport needed to do some work for sure. And you know, it has, and you know, I think it's a lot better today than it was back in the Wild West days. You know, when I was a cyclist. But I feel very fortunate now, like, to, you know, gone through all that and learned a lot of lessons, and also come out the other side, because, you know, not everybody did. Not everybody made it. You know, some people aren't here today. You know, they dealt with a lot of difficult, didn't have the right support system around them. You know, I think about those guys a lot. And, you know, I feel lucky, for sure.
Well, there was also a huge industry that got built around, you know, you guys winning. And like, when Lance was on Joe Rogan, Trek Bicycles, I think when they started was $10 million, $100 million business, and at the end was $1 billion business.
Oh yeah. I remember when people were laughing at us on this. I went to another team called CSC, and all the other teams were laughing at us because we were on these funny looking bikes and funny looking pedals and funny looking wheels. The bikes were Cervelo, you know, just the pedals were Speed Play pedals, which are just, you know, they're everywhere today. Mm-hmm. And the wheels were Zip wheels, you know, deep dish wheels. And
everywhere.
They're everywhere today. And like, so, yeah. Trek bikes, yeah. So, you know, there were some gains there for sure.
But then they all kind of, like, they left overnight. It seemed like when word got out with Lance and all that, everyone dropped them and all that. So on one side, you can argue they rode it all the way up, and on the downside, they were the first to go.
Yeah, fair to say. You know, I missed the first part of your question. Sorry.
Well, the comment that I think Joe Rogan made is that Trek and all those guys rode it all the way up to being a $1 billion company. But then on the way down, they were some of the first people to leave.
Yeah. I mean, it's the brutal world of, you know, it's a business. Cycling is a business. You know, like all sport. I lost everything too. Yeah. And you know, friendships and all that. But yeah, I mean, it's part of it. You know, it's hard, and you go through all sorts of emotions, and but at the end of the day, you know, you find out who your real friends are, and you know that there's something really beautiful about that. You know,
for sure.
Yeah. And you focus on the things that are important to you and the people that are important to you.
Now you got more time to ski, obviously. You're probably an avid skier. Do you get out much on a regular basis?
Yeah, you know, I mean, let's see. I moved here to Missoula, Montana from Colorado. I moved here 8 years ago. Yeah, and it's been awesome. We got a great local ski area called Snowball, and it's awesome. Kind of a mom and pop place. A couple old double chairlifts, a rope tow, and a T-bar. And I coached for the local race team for 4 or 5 years. I did that for a little bit, and just as a kind of fun little project, and I really enjoyed that. Now I don't coach anymore, but I get up there, and you know, I'm a weekend warrior type, and I love skiing. I love just being on the chairlift and looking around, and seeing the beauty. Montana is pretty. Overall, it's pretty remote, and there's a lot of just spectacular scenery. So,
do you guys ride, Pete and Tyler? Do you guys ride? Do you have a favorite bike spot you get out to usually, or do you guys ride a lot?
I ride a lot. I'm sure I ride quite a bit more than Tyler, which is frustrating. Yeah. When we ride together, it still seems pretty fast. But Yeah, like I'm fortunate to live on the west end of town. So like for road riding, I'm like right out in the area. I'm right out in the Springbank, right out my front door, basically, which are great quiet country roads for morning ride. And then no, like quite a bit too.
Huh.
Yeah, I mountain bike a little bit here and there, but I consider myself kind of a recreational or social cyclist now. Yeah. So, but it's nice. It's not I don't go out and try to kick anybody's butt anymore.
Yeah.
Enjoy it, and yeah.
Do you ever go riding with a group of people kind of anonymously, and then halfway through the ride they figure out who you are and they're all suffering?
Oh, once in a while, yeah. I don't like to make people suffer anymore. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. But do you think you were just gifted in a sense with your pain tolerance and all that, or was it kind of a combination of training and everything else?
I think I was born with it. Some people tell me otherwise, but I kind of born with it. Yeah, I grew up with an older brother, older sister, so I think that makes you pretty tough.
Huh.
Yeah, growing up as a ski racer as well, like having to be super disciplined.
Yeah.
Never giving up when it's cold, like always taking another run, working on your turns, not going into the lodge, get hot chocolate, and always going out. And I grew up skiing in New Hampshire, one of the coldest ski areas on the planet.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that made me pretty tough. And then when I started cycling, I used that same mentality, just never giving up, always push harder than the rest of them. And yeah, I mean, I felt like there were a lot of riders that had a lot more talent than me, but maybe not that as much of the never give up attitude. So in a sport, I mean, cycling is all about suffering. So you can suffer more than the rest, then you're going to do okay.
Right. Were you naturally like gifted? I think some people have a higher lactic acid tolerance and all that, or was it more of the mental side of things for you?
I mean, I think I was always a good athlete.
Right.
I excel. I mean, school I did pretty well. Okay. But
yeah.
Athletically, whatever, sports was my thing, growing up. So I didn't know what I was going to do. I know I wanted to go to the Olympics, and ideally that was going to be in skiing. Turned out
That's so cool.
It was cycling, but if it was big, I wanted to play for the Boston Red Sox, play baseball. But I figured out what I was good at. But no, I think I had some talent for sure.
Yeah, I think I mean, life kind of just pushes you in the right direction, I guess it seems. And do you still keep up with Lance? Are you guys still on speaking terms, or has that relationship moved on?
Yeah, I haven't talked to him in several years. Yeah. I mean, maybe someday we'll chat, but yeah, kind of letting things settle down after heavy times. Yeah, but I think he's doing well. It's nice to see him doing well and happy and moving on with his life. That's good.
I'm sure you develop friendships over the years, like kind of like you and Pete. So there's a lot of the fallout. There was probably friendships that maybe were strained along the way, it seems. And
oh yeah. There were some strained relationships. Some are still strained, I'd say, but like, everything gets a little easier with time and and age, right? A little wisdom and like kind of being able to take a few steps back and look at the big picture and why'd they do this or why'd they do that or why'd they say this or that. But, when you really step back and look at the big picture, everyone's doing their best, and sometimes people make mistakes and people say things that they maybe wish they didn't say, or but I don't know, getting older, and I'm getting a little older and wiser. I don't hate anybody anymore. There was a lot of I don't know, had a bitter taste in my mouth, but kind of let all that go.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's yeah, I'm sure it's not easy when the stakes are high, and there's a lot of money on the line too, I would imagine, throughout the years. But I'm sure you guys have talked about all this on your podcast. I won't go over all these details. Do you guys cover all this stuff on your weekly podcasts? Or?
You know what? We haven't yet at all.
Oh, okay.
I think we will. I think at some point, but that's not. wasn't really the point.
Yeah,
It was more to just connect with people who are, I'd say our pod's like, without going through and actually counting, it's probably like 75% cycling.
Yep.
We've had some pretty high profile ultra runners on the show. Like we didn't want to, and that's why we called it Adventure Audio. We didn't want cycling in the name, because if we have an opportunity to talk to somebody like Rick or Ricky Gates, like we gotta talk to those people.
Yeah.
Cool, you know? So and then people that do other things too. There's people who advocate for trails or advocate for diversity. We're interested in all of those types of topics. I guess we're just a little bit hippie, and we like to have those types of chats. But the bike, some of my best friends, for sure, and I think Ty probably the same way. Like Jim would be one of those people. Like, no cycling, there's no people in your life. You know, it's pretty cool that way. The community, the sense of community from it, I think is really, really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, growing up, competitive athletes seem to kind of stick together in some form or another throughout the years. But did you have a highlight in your career, Tyler, along the way? Was there a moment that really stuck out for you?
Oh man, you know, winning the collegiate national championships was really cool back in 1993. Like
really?
When I just, you know, coming back, like I was a ski racer, you know, the year before, you know, coming back from that back injury, that was really neat. You know, winning a stage in the Tour de France was pretty neat. You know, I won an Olympic gold medal, you know, gave it back, you know, 8 years later. But, you know, that was kind of neat.
You still won, yeah.
Won a World Cup. That was pretty, called Liège, Best on Liège. That was pretty cool. I don't know, but those are all neat. But, you know, those are all behind me. I don't really sit and wrote about it. I mean, if you came to my house, I don't think would tell that I was a professional bike racer, you know. Yeah.
Was there a particular low that you had that maybe sticks out without
a low?
Yeah, along the way that.
Yeah, probably the whole dope. You know, having a positive test back in September of 2004. That was, you know, a huge low. Dealing with all, you know, finally coming to terms with the truth and telling the truth. And that was hard. Writing a book about it, spending 2.5 years writing a book about, you know, all your mistakes that you made, you know, that was pretty hard. I mean, writing that book might have been the hardest thing I ever did.
Yeah.
I mean, telling my parents that I doped, you know, that was obviously a very hard moment, but in terms of like a big block of time, that was hard writing that book. You know, I wish I didn't have to write it.
Do you think in a way it made the story more interesting though?
What's that?
Do you think in a way it made the story more interesting? Or is it something that just you wish that never would have happened?
I don't quite understand. Sorry.
Just the whole doping chapter. Do you think in some ways that it made the story more interesting and added kind of a nuance to it, or do you just wish it was a phase that you skipped?
Oh no, I mean it made it. I think, you know, I mean I wish it wasn't about my life, but it is and was. But I mean it's an interesting truth. It's the real, you know, it's the real truth. Like there's a lot of things in life, like, you know, we don't see the real truth. We see it just from the outside. This book's about kind of diving deep and, you know, going into the kind of this hidden world of doping professional cycling back then. You know,
and cycling had its reckoning, and you happened to be right in the thick of it.
Yeah.
But like documentaries like Icarus, I mean, if that doesn't make you aware that this is occurring at a high level in probably a lot of sports, you know, then you're probably not paying it.
Yeah.
It probably is. And these books and these stories and these truths are probably coming.
Right.
From a lot of
different sports. Yeah, for sure. You always wonder about that, eh?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. There's no way that this isn't happening in the NFL or in the NHL, and to some degree, like if there's an opportunity for somebody to elongate their career by 3 or 4 years and make another $9 million, and they're not testing for stuff, like you think people aren't going to, of course they are. That's just human nature. And it would be, and I would be like, I'm 41. It's very easy for me to say at 41 years old, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
21, 22, like, I think I probably would have made the exact same mistake.
Well, it's so much money too. I mean, if you could be, you know.
Totally. And you've been working for years and years and years and years to get there. And then you're confronted with this reality that that's what you need to do to stick and keep your job. And like, I probably would have done the same thing.
Well, if you could look back and say you're a millionaire at the end of the day and you had a few bumps along the way, you had to cut a few corners, it's pretty hard to say you wouldn't do it, you know? I mean, that's...
And it exists in other businesses too. I mean, like, look at the financial crisis and mortgages, all these bogus mortgages and fake appraisals. And like, this happens all over the place. I mean, and Ty talks about that when he does talks. He talks about how this happens in boardrooms and this happens in corporate worlds. And
so, it's just easy to point the finger.
Totally.
Well, I mean, that's life, I guess. But I won't go too much more here. I really appreciate you guys taking the time, Tyler, especially. And
Trevor, thanks, man.
Nice to meet you, Trevor. Yeah, thanks for having us on your podcast. And if you ever have any more questions, we're around. You know, Pete's in Calgary. I'm here in Missoula, Montana. So
that's really cool. Well, coincidentally, didn't Bodie move up there too? Bodie Miller?
I think he winters in Big Sky.
Yeah.
So
ski racing, small world again.
I hope I run into him. That'd be neat.
Oh, it's cool just to talk ski racing with people too. You know, it's. So
beautiful. When you launch the podcast, tag us and we'll share it. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Really appreciate it. I will do that. I'm going to go edit a bit now and probably post it tomorrow. And
awesome. Hey, good luck with the coffee business.
Thanks a lot. It's appreciate it. It's kind of been a way to give back, like I said, the environment a bit. And so
I like what you're doing.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Trevor.
I won't. I'll end it here.
Okay. Hey, nice to meet you, Trevor. I gotta go to get to